Of light rain and drizzle, but a mild start to Thursday with temperatures of 17 or 18 first thing. Now, the rain and drizzle across the south of England will ease through the morning. It will push further north into Wales, but for northern England, Northern Ireland, as well as for much of the south and east of Scotland, plenty of bright weather first thing. However, there will be a keen breeze, and that strong wind across the north and northwest of Scotland will continue to drive heavy showers and longer spells of rain in as the day goes on, but those showers becoming fewer later on from the west. The rain in the south will move north, and so after a bright start to the day, northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland turn wet into the afternoon. The rain not quite reaching the central belt, 18 Celsius here, but it's very warm in the south as skies brighten, 23 or 24 Celsius. An even warmer day expected on Friday in the southeast, with temperatures reaching the mid-20s in places. Likewise, it's bright but cool across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and for parts of northwest England, but in between there will be spells of wet weather through Friday, and that rain will be fairly extensive as we start the weekend before gradually getting drier next week.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
A special relationship.
The relationship that we have is fantastic.
We have a special relationship with the United States.
There is no relationship like this.
We have got the greatest relationship of two superpowers.
In just a few moments, the state banquet at Windsor Castle in honour of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, will begin. Royalty, dignitaries, politicians and businessmen have gathered to hear the President and the King. During this state visit, we will ask, how special is the special relationship? Also tonight.
Tariffs, 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 tariff, tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it?
No, it's not a beautiful word, actually, but why is the American economy growing and Britain is stagnating? Is it time the United Kingdom embraced free trade again, or are President Trump's tariffs to blame? Plus... Nobody does pomp and ceremony like Britain. From carriage processions, gun salutes, marching bands and flypasts, Britain's pageantry is one of our great diplomatic assets, particularly for an Anglophile like President Trump. But at what point does it cease to become charming and become Ruritanian? As we're asking you tonight, could and should Donald Trump be Britain's next Prime Minister? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most perspicacious panel, the former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Tola, and the businessman and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. As ever, you know I want to hear your views, especially about whether Donald Trump should be Prime Minister. Mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Katie Bowen.
Jacob, thank you and good evening. The headlines at 8:02. The King has welcomed President Donald Trump to Windsor Castle as his second state visit will be marked with the state banquet set to get underway shortly. We'll have all of the events as they happen here on GB News throughout the evening. Well, earlier, the President and First Lady were joined by their Majesties alongside Sir Keir Starmer and Lady Starmer for the beating retreat ceremony, which took place on the East Lawn at Windsor Castle. The event culminated in a flypast from the RAF's Red Arrows as proceedings concluded. 4 F-35 military jets were due to take part in the display, although it was reduced due to weather conditions. Also this afternoon, the President has visited the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II to pay his respects to the late monarch, and he laid a wreath at the tomb in St George's Chapel, which he called a great honour. While away from Windsor, protests against the historic second state visit have been taking place in central London, organised by the Stop Trump Coalition. The Metropolitan Police estimate that up to 5,000 people have attended that protest today. Former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn told GB News national reporter Will Godley why he was attending earlier.
So there's an alternative to economic division, social division and the rise of racism in our society. It's unusual to have a second state visit to the same person. Very strange, and he's not actually meeting anybody on this trip. He's just a choreographed visit for the benefit of American television. We're showing us a few people here that would like to tell him something different.
Elsewhere today, the Home Secretary has branded efforts to frustrate the partial migrant returns deal with France as intolerable and has vowed to appeal yesterday's court decision. The Home Office confirmed that for a third day, no migrants left for France today. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says she will fight efforts to frustrate removals at every step, confirming that the Home Office will appeal the High Court's decision yesterday to temporarily block the deportation of an Eritrean migrant to France. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps said that Shabana Mahmood is, quote, reacting in panic to the collapse of her gimmick returns deal. And back to that state visit, Britain and the US have struck a tech deal that could bring billions of pounds of investment to the UK. Sir Keir Starmer said the agreement represented a general step change in Britain's relationship with the US that would deliver growth, security and opportunity up and down the country. The tech partnership comes as Britain's steel industry expressed disappointment as plans for 0% tariff on steel export to the US have been scrapped. The UK has paused its push to cut the levy, which currently stands at 25% to zero, as originally agreed earlier this year. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More on that state banquet very shortly, but now it's back to Jacob.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. How special is the special relationship? President Trump's state visit is the right time to ponder this question. The UK and the USA share deep historical ties. They rebelled against us, after all, and a common language. The notion of a special relationship emerged after the Second World War during the early Cold War years. Winston Churchill gave the phrase prominence in a 1946 speech, urging unity against the rising Soviet threat. Since then, successive British and American governments have invoked it whenever they wish to underscore close Anglo-American ties. But how special is it really? The special relationship, in many people's view, is a bit of a one-way street. The British worry about it endlessly, but for the Americans, it's one of many such relationships. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher shared a bond rarely seen between world leaders, when he was still slow supporter over the Falklands and invaded Grenada without mentioning it to the British, in spite of it sharing a queen with us. He technically declared war on the Queen. Nonetheless, during this period, Britain and America achieved flourishing free trade and the downfall of communism, one of the great events of the 20th century. Donald Trump's presidencies have brought energy to the special relationship, unlike Obama and Biden, neither of whom seem to like this country very much. Fortunately, his instinctive Anglophilia meant Britain enjoyed a warmer reception in Washington than many of our European counterparts. Just listen to the affection with which Donald Trump spoke of our late Queen.
And this is with Queen Elizabeth, right here, who was fantastic, by the way. Here's now the King. Here's Charles with the guard. And this is the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. It's a piece of history at the highest level. And hopefully he's going to be well, because he's a really good person. Camilla is fantastic.
Donald Trump's preference for bilateral arrangements made provision for Britain to negotiate on its own terms, whether on trade, defence or intelligence. His belief that Europe should take greater responsibility for its own security helped Britain's role as America's closest ally on the continent. And where foreign policy is concerned, the UK is well positioned to secure tangible benefits by aligning with US priorities. America is our ally. Donald Trump is an outward Anglophile, and this bodes well for the strength of the special relationship, even if, under previous administrations, they weren't always so friendly. Joe Biden's presidency set the special relationship back almost irreparably. His identification with his Irish heritage coloured his approach to issues such as Northern Ireland and Brexit, creating friction rather than goodwill. His administration's focus on rebuilding ties with Brussels further diluted Britain's influence in Washington. Biden's priorities rarely placed the UK at the forefront, and that's exposed the limits of a special relationship that can be taken for granted. It's dependent on the incumbent US administration as much as the historical ties between the two nations. Luckily, President Trump is fond of our nation and wants to keep the special relationship through his time in the White House. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. And remember to let me know, do you think Donald Trump should become Britain's next Prime Minister? Well, I'm joined now by a friend of the programme, Chairman of Republicans Overseas, UK, and my panel, the former spokesman of Reform, Gawain Tola, and the businessman and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. Well, Greg, let me come to you first. I could not be more pro-American. My father's mother was American, that I've visited your wonderful country many times. It is a great and powerful country. But it always seems to me that the special relationship is a sort of nervous tick as the British. And American politicians, when they come here, say special relationship, special relationship. But the US has a special relationship with Israel. It's got a special relationship with Mexico and with Canada. That's a bit fractious at the moment. We are a supplicant to a greater power, and we need to recognise that.
Well, I think both of those things could be true, Jacob. I mean, we do have relationships with other countries, but I think there's a special cultural and historical bond with the United Kingdom. And I do think that there's a great benefit for both countries to leverage the special relationship. So, yeah, there's ups and downs, as you pointed out in your monologue. But I do think that it's more important than any relationship that we have with other countries. Okay, we might trade more with China, that's obvious, but I do think that the cultural and history, I mean, remember the American founding fathers were Englishmen, and they gave us your great language, and they could, the great documents were often based on the great British documents, the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights. So
I think I saw in the papers today is the anniversary of the landing at Plymouth of the Pilgrims.
I did not know
I think that was in one of the papers, either today or yesterday.
Also I think it was the anniversary of the great air battle, helped me on 1940. So Battle of Britain, thank you. So I forgot where I am. And so I do think that those are moments. Remember, that brought America ultimately into the war.
But America is quite rightly interested in what is to its advantage.
And so should the UK.
Indeed, so should we be. Yeah. And that these relationships work when we're pragmatic about it. Right. And the British don't think that the US will automatically help the UK. Trump is very pro-Britain, but he's not really helping us on tariffs. He's done a bit, but not that much. In the 1960s, Harold Wilson wouldn't help Lyndon B. Johnson over Vietnam. That it being special doesn't mean that we always come to the same conclusion.
Absolutely, because we're independent sovereigns. I mean, that's really important to keep that in mind. And I think, what is it, 90% of the time, is it 95? I don't know. But, you know, the majority of the time, the great majority of the time, we are aligned together. And again, there's economic ties, which should be transactional. That's the nature of capitalism. But it's the cultural, it's the historical that I think is a special bond that we'll never have with Mexico or other trading partners.
And that it's important to remember simply how much bigger America is. Yeah. That most people in the UK know something about America, but actually America thinks more about travel within America, with what's going on. If you're living in Florida, New York's quite a long way away.
Right.
And we, I think, forget that sometimes in this country. We think it's on a similar scale to us.
No.
And that means international relations are of less interest to Americans than they are to Britons.
Actually, you're absolutely right. It's a vast country. You could, ski, you could go to the beach, there's winter, there's summer. There's a lot to do in America. And when I hear someone make the joke or the criticism that, only X% of Americans have passports, well, you going to Spain is like an American in New York going to California or Florida. It's not apples and apples. But I do think, it's important to keep in mind that although it's vast and we have great resources, we're still in a really significant and close relationship with the UK.
But it has its limits. There are two things that come to mind. One is Day of Legend and Song, when Obama told us to vote to remain in the European Union. And as a Brexiteer, I was so thrilled by that because I knew it was helping us win.
5 points in the polls on that one.
And the other occasion was when Guardian readers decided to write to a swing county in, I think, Oregon, to say vote against George Bush. And everyone voted and that worked. So we're friendly, but we don't like being told what to do, either of us.
Of course. And it should be that. That's the way it should be. And I think that's, you should have great confidence. So there's difference between telling and helping. And I think the president, and the vice president, when they make criticism about the UK, about the boats, when they make that about free speech, or they make comments about, economic policy, the hostility here to the private sector, they're not doing it out of condescension. They're doing it out of caring. They're doing it because they actually love America, but they also love the UK, as you pointed out.
And Kevin, let me bring you in, because the left, when they've been protesting, and not your left, to be fair, aren't very keen on Donald Trump. But actually, Donald Trump has been the most pro-British American president we've had since Ronald Reagan, possibly George Bush Jr.
I think that's open to question, Jacob, but I will say that what matters now is that the Labour Prime Minister and the Republican President have a very good relationship, and that, we haven't got time for me to take issue with your comments about Biden and Obama. I agree the intervention in Brexit was a mistake. And we don't like being told, and we don't like, us in the Labour Party don't like the President of the United States telling us we've got an issue with free speech any more than Americans like us preaching about gun control, right? We can't understand it, but it's in their culture, their constitution, and so it is. So Trump, without getting into relativity and league tables of who has done more as a US president, I love what's happened today and the billions of investment. And these American companies are creating jobs up and down this country, and Starmer is playing a blinder.
I'm going to agree with you, which may surprise you. I think that Starmer and Blair was particularly brilliant, because Blair managed to turn on a sixpence from being Bill Clinton's best friend to being the best friend of George Bush Jr., whereas John Major got on very well with George Bush Sr., but completely fell out with Clinton. And that actually Starmer and Blair have realised that with our most important foreign affairs relationship, you've got to put your personal politics aside and get on with them.
Of course you do. And in the real world, all the people demonstrating today, you know, fine, but he's an American president and they elected him, right? And that's it.
Which correspondents to the Times aren't so keen on. There were some very priggish letters in the Times yesterday saying they should turn their back to the wall. But do you think Nigel might be willing to make way for Donald to be Prime Minister after 2029?
We have a Prime Minister in waiting already. And I think Donald would be delighted in that if it was to happen. Kevin, this is going to be one of those embarrassing points where we all agree. Kevin is quite right. The demonstrators make themselves look foolish. This is real politics. This is big boys' games, and they are playing in the sandpit.
But it is essentially one way, isn't it? That it is overwhelmingly important for the British Prime Minister to get on with the American President. The American President can get away with being pretty snippy towards the British Prime Minister.
And post-war, the Americans destroyed us.
Well,
they absolutely destroyed us.
Suez was stopped by Eisenhower.
And the debts and all the rest of it, they're absolutely having us. And that was State Department's policy. Destroy the Brits. Get them out of the world. And it worked. And Suez and so forth. However, there is no doubt, and I think in your league table, there's absolutely no doubt that Trump is the most pro-British president we have had. And the Trump one was a massive missed opportunity.
Clinton was the same.
No, not so much. Not so much. Trump one was a massive missed opportunity by Theresa May and the then government because they were so worried about idiots in Trafalgar Square that they did nothing and they didn't take advantage of those opportunities.
Well,
we could have had the free trade deal years ago.
We're going to come on and talk about economics. But part of that is that actually we have very similar and high standards in the two countries, and we seem to set up standards as a barrier to trade unnecessarily.
The common law. We share at least the basis of a legal system, which makes trade between our two nations easier, even with tariffs. Because there are all sorts of non-tariff barriers that you created by having different legal systems, and having a similar basis in the common law means that despite the tariffs, we can trade more effectively with other common law nations.
I think it's arguable, following that point, if you look at the deals announced today and the trade deals that Starmer and Trump have already come to together, I think arguably the US-UK economic relationship is looking stronger than it has in decades, and that's going to have real-life impacts for the listeners and viewers of this station.
And more impact on the UK, just given the scale.
Correct.
So that's another reason to embrace it.
Yeah.
And what about the security partnership? Because Donald Trump has been much tougher on NATO than previous US presidents. Is he concerned about the security of Europe and, by implication, the UK? Is it a negotiating tactic to make us spend more? If the chips were down, would the US be willing to intervene?
Oh, absolutely they would. But also the president understands that we have to pivot to China. We can no longer fight a two-front war. We could until Obama decided that we should not. So he dialed it down to 1.5. I don't know how you fight a half-front war, but anyway. And then Biden dialed it down to one front. So it's important for American security to have NATO be stronger. That's why the president was doing it, and look what happened.
I could throw out the word Chagos.
Every NATO...
You could do, because this is very important. Will President Trump help global security by getting Britain out of this terrible mess on Chagos, which Kevin Stratton-Starmer
I would hope so. I mean, I was disappointed that he didn't already. And I think one of the things, being the art of the deal president and looking out for America first, he just thought, I'm speculating, by the way, he didn't tell me this, but, okay, I don't care. I'm not paying for it. The British taxpayer is paying for it. Better than having the American taxpayer. So that might be the transactional nature, but upon reflection, I hope he changes.
Well, that would be a great outcome of the States visit.
It would be fantastic.
That happens. Anyway, thank you very much to Greg and my panel. Coming up in just a moment.
Tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it?
Well, not that beautiful a word. Anyway, why is the American economy growing while Britain is stagnating? Is it time the United Kingdom embraced free trade again, or are President Trump's tariffs to blame?
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
What do you think is the origin of this palace not being loved by the royal family as a place to live?
Well, you see, it's a little bit like an Edwardian hotel in Brighton. It's all long corridors and rooms off them. It's not very friendly as a place, you know. So the Queen and Prince Philip occupied the rooms along the Constitution Hill side. She had half of them and he had the other half. And if ever they came out into a corridor, you know. So it's just not very friendly. And of course, the other thing is that the gardens are now terribly overlooked by the Hilton and other big buildings. Whereas the King living at Clarence House, he has a very nice garden there and it's not overlooked at all. I mean, I have seen Prince Philip's rooms because I worked with his office a lot and I did a book about his mother, so I was there quite often. I haven't seen the Queen's rooms, but I'd love to see them.
Yes. And at the beginning of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, the palace was not open to the public at all, was it?
No, it wasn't. And actually, she didn't want to go and live there either. She was living in Clarence House, but Churchill said that it's sovereign's residence and she had to move in. He forced her to move in. That was quite tricky because the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret were still living there at the beginning. And then they moved into Clarence House a little while later, somewhat before the coronation. The only reason that the palace was open as a public tourist attraction was to make money to pay for the fire damage of 1992 at Windsor Castle. And that was so successful that the opening has gone on ever since, and it raises money for the Royal Collection Trust in order to look after all the treasures which are held by the sovereign for the nation.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show Live starts Monday night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were asking if Donald Trump should be our next Prime Minister. Now, loads of responses on Twitter, but some come in on the Mail Mogs. Marion says, yes, Donald Trump would make a fantastic PM. By Christmas, what a present. We can share America's president, and they can share our royal family. The Americans would love it too. Great programme. And Dan says, perhaps Starmer could pay Donald Trump to take the UK as a 51st state.
Yeah.
He was happy enough to pay to give away the Chagos Islands. And with the state of the UK under this government, Starmer would need to pay the USA a high price to take us on. And we've received a most intriguing response from somebody called Sixtus. Not many people called Sixtus in this country. He says, Dear Jacob, Donald Trump would be a fantastic Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but we all know his true vocation is to become the High Sheriff of Somerset, where there couldn't be any possible better role in English society than that. We still want to know what you think of Donald Trump and should he be the next Prime Minister. Email mailmog@gbnews.com. But first, why is the American economy growing while Britain is stagnating? The United States economy grew at an annualised rate of 3.3% in the second quarter of 2025, along with the drop in inflation. The growth was fuelled by a sharp drop in imports and stronger consumer spending, though investments and exports fell. President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs caused panic across the world economy on a scale not witnessed since the 2008 financial crisis. But Trump's economic agenda, like many of his policies, is framed around fulfilling campaign promises and putting America first. In Britain, inflation is still at a high of 3.8%, double the target nearly, and with the Chancellor's November budget looming, growth forecasts have been downgraded again. Why is America getting it right while we're not? And could the state visit help Britain and the USA embrace free trade and get our economy moving again? I'm delighted to have a friend of the programme with me this evening, Catherine McBride, distinguished economist. Catherine, thank you for coming in. Why is America getting it right? And not just the UK, but the whole of Europe is pretty stagnant.
Well, first of all is energy. Energy is the most important thing to any economy, and the United States has plentiful energy. They're encouraging its development. They have taken away a lot of the mandates with the green agenda, so that if you want to buy an electric car, you can, but they're not going to subsidise it. Now, the UK is still subsidising our green agenda. We are basically taxing our oil and gas out of existence. So while America is booming and has become, in the last 20 years, the world's biggest exporter of oil and gas, and we could be at least a big exporter, and instead we're an importer. And it's the most shocking thing.
And our electricity prices for industrial usage are 4 times those of the US. So
well, it's worse than that. I've tried to explain this to people. I brought it along for you.
Yep.
This is the price per state. The other thing the US benefits from is competition between states, which the UK could benefit from. We have a devolved nation, but we didn't let any of the devolved nations do anything. But we could be like a US system where you will find very, very cheap electricity in the southern states, much more expensive ones. California is outrageously expensive because it's all, you know, solar and wind. Whereas when you get down to the sort of Mississippis and people that want to build up industry, they've got industrial and commercial electricity down at sort of 6 cents, per kilowatt hour.
OK, which is where we were 20 years ago.
Well, exactly. And where we could be today if we'd just start making it with our own gas rather than importing gas and putting massive taxes on it.
And the key in America was fracking, wasn't it? That's what changed the situation and made the US the biggest exporter of oil and gas in the world.
Certainly that was definitely for gas. They've always had a lot of oil, but they were continuing to explore for oil. They were not sort of closing down those industries. In Trump's first term, he was encouraging a pipeline to come across Canada and bring oil down from Alaska and from Canada. It's something basic to all industry is energy. Everything we do requires energy. There are other things that they've done as well. They've got into AI and tech. During COVID, they realised how dependent they were on China for really basic materials. Not only things like computer chips, but also the ingredients in pharmaceuticals. So, Europeans still make all of the packaged pharmaceuticals, but the ingredients are coming from China. Now, the Americans sort of saw that during COVID and realised that was a mistake. And during the first Trump term and through the Biden term, though the press didn't notice, they have been onshoring or encouraging onshoring of all these components, which they need to do. So people are looking at the tariffs and going, oh, how dreadful. But they are forgetting that for years and years, since this war, sorry, I'll let you speak, it's your programme, America had incredibly low tariffs or no tariffs on most goods. They encouraged the Europeans to reindustrialise, but the Europeans then got to the point where they were really reindustrialised and never wanted to allow other goods in. So they built these amazing tariff walls around Europe. And China's done the same thing. They were allowed to join the WTO as a developing nation, so they got all the benefits of the developing nations. But now that they're well and truly developed, they don't want to give those up.
All right. I do want to ask you about tariffs, but I want to bring Kevin in first because the most popular Labour cabinet minister is Ed Miliband, and the best thing to do for our economy is to scrap the green agenda and get rid of the net zero target. He'll never do that, will he?
Well, that's your opinion and Catherine and others, but there is a different reading of all of this, which is that the big picture is that the UK has, since the late 1800s, nearly always been significantly poorer than the States in terms of capita GDP per head. That's not a new thing. The issue with current growth levels, where most optimistically we're looking at maybe 1.7, 1.8% this year from people like KPMG, generally others are 1.6, 1.7, is that productivity. We don't invest enough in R&D. Our infrastructure hasn't been invested for many years under recent governments, including your own, if I may say. And the reality is, you don't often, perhaps hear it here, but the Labour government is very pro-growth, very pro-business, and we've settled the ship.
But it's pro-growth in theory, but not in practice.
Well, yeah.
And actually, US infrastructure, if you ever go on the US freeways, the roads are in pretty dreadful condition. They make our motorways look perfectly adequate.
You talk about pro-growth. How can you be pro-growth when you are pro-high energy costs?
Well, we're not pro high energy costs.
Well, you are. The policies you have are literally high. Do you know what happened to Royal Welshman today?
They didn't start them.
Oh no, that's true.
I 100% agree.
What is that change?
Yes, but the first person to
But until you have cheap, reliable energy, you have no growth in your economy. Correct. And we do not have cheap, reliable energy.
We are on the way. I mean, this is because all of our investments in renewable energy, the jobs they're going to create. Yeah, but listen, you have to judge it. Hang on.
How many jobs get closed?
Let me finish.
Jaguar Land Rover has closed for I don't know how long. What's it? Wedgwood today has closed for 90 days. We are deindustrialising rapidly because of our energy costs.
Labour is investing in skills and training across the country. It's a big,
big... Every job in the green economy, you lose 3 in the real economy.
Besides oil and gas being necessary as fuels and electricity, they are also the base ingredients for plastics and chemicals and pharmaceuticals. And we have seen companies like Ineos, which is not just a big UK company, it's one of the biggest companies in the world.
We're going to have to move on, but Catherine, just a brief word on tariffs, because you and I are instinctively free traders.
Yes.
And you were saying that tariffs have actually helped America. Yes. How do you square that circle?
Well, I'm not actually a free trader. I'm someone who's looked at tariffs. I've read a lot of trade agreements. I've had to scrutinise them for the government. Everyone has tariffs. There's a fantastic book called No Trade is Free by Robert Lightenhauser. I absolutely love the title. I would have stolen that if I could have written the book. Even Singapore puts 80% tariffs on its beer. The only country that was really into free trade was America, except for clothing. They had very high tariffs on their clothing, still do.
And the UK in the 19th century, when we were our richest?
Well, we were free traders almost. We're not really, because we still had the calico tax on cotton because we're trying to protect our wool industry. When you go through it, every nation tries to protect themselves. America's doing it for very good reason. Strategically, they need to make their own steel, their own aluminium, their own semiconductors and their own pharmaceutical ingredients. Without that, they are beholden to China, and I don't think anyone wants to be beholden to China anymore.
Catherine, thank you very much. And to my most punctilious panel, in a moment we're going to get something extremely exciting. As with so many national anthems, it's one about beating the British, which I always find rather depressing. Anyway, no visit pomp and ceremony like Britain, from carriage processions, gun salutes, marching bands and flypasts. Britain's pageantry is one of our greatest diplomatic assets, particularly for an Anglophile like President Trump. But at what point does it cease to be charming and become Ruritanian? Thank you very much.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
If you're thinking of avoiding the unsettled weather in the UK and heading overseas, you'll find very warm weather in Spain, across the Canaries, as well as Madeira, unusually warm for the time of year. Portugal likewise, but some showery rain affecting southern parts of Portugal. Meanwhile, plenty of sunshine through Spain into the Alps, much of Italy as well, turning hotter here over the next few days. Staying breezy for Greece, particularly the islands, but most places enjoying long spells of sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. During the next 24 hours we can expect misty and damp weather to continue in the south whilst it stays mild. Further north, clearer, fresher but also very breezy as this area of low pressure moves into the north of Scotland. Isobars tighten, strong winds overnight along with heavy showers and longer spells of rain for the Northern Isles, the Outer Hebrides into the Northwest Highlands. But for the rest of Scotland, breezy, yes, however, all that combined with clear spells, as well as Northern Ireland, Northern England seeing clear spells at times overnight. In the south, Wales, across the Midlands, the south of England, it's going to be a misty night with a lot of low cloud, outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, but a mild start to Thursday with temperatures of 17 or 18 first thing. Now, the rain and drizzle across the south of England will ease through the morning. It will push further north into Wales, but for Northern England, Northern Ireland, as well as for much of the south and east of Scotland, plenty of bright weather first thing. However, there will be a keen breeze, and that strong wind across the north and northwest of Scotland will continue to drive heavy showers and longer spells of rain in as the day goes on, but those showers becoming fewer later on from the west. The rain in the south will move north, and so after a bright start to the day, Northern England, Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland turn wet into the afternoon. The rain not quite reaching the central belt, 18 Celsius here, but it's very warm in the south as skies brighten, 23 or 24 Celsius. An even warmer day expected on Friday in the southeast, with temperatures reaching the mid-20s in places. Likewise, it's...
Well, God save the King and God bless America. I think we are about to head off to the state banquet. Alex Armstrong, tell us the breaking news.
Hello, Jacob. Thank you very much. Of course, yes, we're going to be going live to the state banquet in Windsor Castle. Of course, this historic second banquet for Donald Trump. You can see dignitaries and attendees gathering there on your screens now. Of course, we'll bring you all of those images. I believe we can see, so we've also got Sam Altman from OpenAI just in shots there. So lots of dignitaries, including those from the US technology sector. Cameron Walker is joining me to give some fantastic insights this evening. Cameron, hello.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm good, Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us. Cameron Walker there down the line. Cameron, can you tell us a little bit about what the viewers should expect to see from this historic second state banquet for Donald Trump?
Well, I certainly can, Alex, because I was in that very room around an hour ago getting a preview of this magnificent table, which I'm told is the length of 2.7 Marine One helicopters laid end to end. That's 47.2 metres long, to be precise, in St George's Hall of Windsor Castle. And these are live pictures you are seeing on your screens now as guests start to arrive. 139 candles, 1,452 pieces of cutlery, and there are 160 guests, and well over 100 staff will be serving them. You may want to know who's on the guest list. Well, I can actually tell you. We have the usual politicians, as you would expect. Leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. We're expecting the Prime Minister as well. We've got Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons, the First Minister of Scotland as well. But interestingly, we have some big tech names. So we have Tim Cook, the Chief Executive of Apple. We've got and then interestingly, we have Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, who of course has been heavily criticised in the last week for the judgment calls made by number 10 Downing Street. So there were a few raised eyebrows when I saw him on the table. And sat next to him, the media mogul, Rupert Murdoch. He is sat next to Morgan McSweeney, so I'll let you read into that perhaps a little bit later on. We also have, of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales. The Princess of Wales is going to be sat next to President Donald Trump. We've also got the Foreign Secretary, the newly appointed Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Her husband, Ed Balls, I've also spotted in the crowd there. We've got Andrew Bailey as well. We've got John Healey. We've got the former Olympian Catherine Granger too. So it's a whole range of guests from the world of sport, from the world of tech, from the world of business. And it's all about, of course, Alex, shoring up the relationship between Britain and the United States. And this is the piece de resistance for President Trump, this lavish state banquet hosted in his honour. We know, of course, that he loves the pomp, he loves the pageantry, he loves feeling like the most important person in the room, and he certainly will be tonight, of course, as King Charles's guest of honour. And this is, of course, hosting a state banquet, something that King Charles is incredibly used to by now. So for him, there's kind of not much difference in it. But of course, for the Prime Minister Starmer, it really is his ace card, the royal family, when it's King Charles, of course, wielding his soft power in order to make the president feel good. So when it comes to those tough political negotiations in Chequers and the Prime Minister's country residence tomorrow, perhaps he's going to be in a slightly better mood to do perhaps slightly better trade deals with the United Kingdom. And speaking of trade deals, I spot Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, in the middle of your screens there, looking incredibly happy actually to, of course, be there as Chancellor of the Exchequer, as one of the Prime Minister's key ministers. She, of course, is one of the guests on the list. And we are expecting both the King and President Trump to deliver speeches at this magnificent state banquet inside St George's Hall. Of course, this whole room was completely gutted by a fire in the late Queen's Annus Horribilis in 1992, and the Queen had to open up both Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace to paying tourists, to paying customers in order to pay for the refurbishment, and it has been restored to its former glory. It really certainly has done. The flowers are, which you can see on the table settings, hand-picked seasonal flowers, of course, from the gardens of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, Alex, and of course we are expecting all of Trump's, or a lot of Trump's government ministers inside St George's Hall as well.
Indeed, and you mentioned there the King will make a speech, of course, which is customary on such events. What sort of things go into making a King's speech, especially such an important diplomatic occasion like this one, Cameron?
Well, in the first instance, it is the King and his team at the royal household who will write the speech, because, of course, it is him wielding his soft power. And, of course, the King has to remain above politics, Alex. So clearly there's going to be no party political mentions within his speech. What I suspect he will focus on is the deep relationship Britain has with the United States, also the shared history, and also what we have in common. So NATO defence ties, I suspect, potentially could be a big theme. Any anecdotes that perhaps President Trump had with the late Queen, King Charles's mother, that's the sort of thing that you would expect in the speech. But of course, it will have been written in very close consultation with Prime Minister Starmer's government, particularly the Foreign Office as well. They will probably have a say in it, so it would have been passed perhaps between Number 10, the Foreign Office, and of course Buckingham Palace before the King reads it aloud. But at the end of the day, the King has the final say, with the strong advice of his private secretary, Sir Clive Alston, and of course his communications team, and of course the communications team at Number 10. But first and foremost, this is the King's opportunity, really, to wield his soft power and try and make, as I said, the President of the United States feel good and feel honoured. And of course the whole menu has been designed in order to honour the United States and the United Kingdom. I believe I can tell you now, yes I can. So the menu itself, it's got Hampshire watercress panna cotta. It all sounds really posh and lovely, doesn't it? It's parmesan shortbread and quail egg salads. That's what the President's going to be treated to. He's also got organic Norfolk chicken wrapped in courgettes with thyme and savoury infused jus, and then he's got a vanilla ice cream bomb and Kentish strawberry sorbet. And Alex, this is why I feel sorry for President Trump. There's a new cocktail that's been created, but of course President Trump is teetotal, so he's not going to be able to taste it. And it's created for the occasion. It's called the Transatlantic, a whiskey sour, a UK-US twist on the classic whiskey sour. The cocktail blends the smoky depth, I'm told by Buckingham Palace, of Johnny Walker Black with a bright citrus of marmalade. So I'm sure a lot of his guests are going to be able to enjoy that, or lots of the US contingent, but not President Trump himself.
That sounds absolutely delicious. It's a shame we can't try some ourselves. Perhaps we can do our own sort of cocktail experiment here one day, Cameron, and give it a go. Also, the music is quite important to these sorts of events as well, is it not, Cameron? And this will be carefully selected, this music, to reflect both British history and American history. Do we know what sort of music we can expect to hear tonight?
Yes, I can actually, and it's a whole variety of music. As you say, it is going to reflect the shared relationship between Britain and the United States. You have everything from Nessun Dorma. We've got a James Bond medley that's going to play, of course, a very famous franchise both here in the United Kingdom and the United States. We've got an Irish Party in Third Class from the world-famous Titanic movie, which James Cameron directed all the way back in 1997. We've got a Hungarian dance number 5. We've got who else do we have? We've got some Lopez. We've got there's lots and lots of music taking part throughout the evening, Alex. So lots and lots of music going on. Now I'm not sure if you have the image that Kensington Palace has released in the last couple of minutes of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Hopefully we can bring that up for you in a moment. But the Princess of Wales looks very, very regal indeed, wearing Princess Diana's lover's knot tiara, taken in Frogmore House, which is where the Princess will be entertaining the First Lady of the United States tomorrow, while the President is at Chequers with the Prime Minister. And it's certainly on our social media channels, so we can't bring it up for you, that image, and on gbnews.com/royal. But I think it shows that although the Princess of Wales in particular has had a hard couple of years, here we go. Here is the image in question. The Princess of Wales wearing wearing a English designer, and she is also wearing the Princess Diana's lover's knot tiara as well. So Philippa Lepley is the British designer, a full-length hand-embroidered over a silk crepe gown. It really is spectacular indeed. And as you can see, the guests mingling. Usually when this sort of feed starts, it's about 10 minutes away from the royal procession entering St George's Hall, following their private drinks reception even outside of St George's Hall. That's Sir Clive Alderton there, the King's principal private secretary. He's the King's right-hand man when it comes to government relationships and diplomatic relationships with the visiting head of state. And in the royal procession, we are expecting, of course, the King, the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales. Perhaps we'll be seeing some other members of the royal family in there as well. Of course, the President, First Lady Melania Trump as well. We will also expect the Secretary of State of the United States of America as well, his Chief of Staff, President Trump's Chief of Staff, and a number of others too. But 160 guests at this dinner, Alex, and it's the fun facts for you. It is the oldest working kitchen in the country, 750 years old, and it was built in the reign of Edward III.
And Cameron, while we're talking about attendees, because this is such a critical event for the UK government at such a dire economic moment for us, going back to some of those massive technology moguls that are in the room tonight, we've got NVIDIA's CEO there, a massive chip manufacturer, of course. You mentioned Rupert Murdoch and others. What sort of diplomacy might be allowed to take place on such an occasion?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because back in July, President Trump filed a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch a day after a newspaper published a story reporting on his ties with a wealthy financier who I will not mention here. But I think it's very interesting that Rupert Murdoch is still a guest at the state banquet, and of course sat next to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff as well. I think that's pretty telling. I think it's also pretty telling, of course, that we've got the Chief Executive of Apple at the table. We've also got someone very high up in Google as well. So it's all about these big tech relationships that President Trump and is trying to perhaps pursue. Big American corporations, of course, having a stake in the United Kingdom. So King Charles gets people around the table quite literally in this instance.
Indeed.
The world of tech, the world of American business, politics and diplomacy.
We have images of Keir Starmer on the screen, the Prime Minister, of course, on the screen, beaming at the moment, as I'm sure he would be with all of these, hopefully, potential deals he could strike with a lot of those exceptionally powerful people in the room, Cameron. And we've also got, I believe, Grant Harold, former royal butler, who will be joining us, perhaps now even, to comment on this beautiful, beautiful occasion. Cameron, I've had the privilege of walking through that room, as you mentioned. It has obviously been open to the public, and what was striking to me is the beautiful symbols across the room, on the roofing, exceptional details, things that you just don't believe is possible when we talk about architecture these days. What sort of things will the guests be able to see as they walk across that beautiful hall?
Well, Alex, it is the oldest occupied castle in the world, and it's really hard to talk about the scale of this place until you are physically here, because it is humongous. More than 1,000 rooms are inside this castle. St George's Hall is the largest room in the entire castle, and of course it started off as a Norman keep and then was added to throughout the centuries. I'm sat outside King Henry VIII Gate, for example, but St George's Hall, as I said, was rebuilt after the fire in 1992. But the ceiling is studded with coats of arms of every single Knight of the Garter since the order was founded in 1348, and the armoured figures on horseback at the east end of the hall, which is the other end to the one that you are seeing here, I believe. That is known as the King's Champion. The champion used to ride into the coronation banquet held in Westminster Hall, and of course it gives that sense of history, doesn't it? And here we are on your screens, just walking through the Waterloo Chamber, the start of the royal procession into St George's Hall, and I will have a list of who is part of that royal procession very shortly, but it will of course be led by King Charles and President Donald Trump.
Melania,
followed by that we have the Queen.
Yeah, I was just saying, Melania looking very striking there in yellow, not a colour we often see at a state banquet. You think usually these sorts of events they tend to dress down.
Yes, very yellow, but I think a state banquet, Alex, is a time to dress up, as you can see now with the Prince of Wales, the Princess of Wales. There, she's talking to to Michael Boulos, part of the US contingent, and we've got the Princess Royal there, who of course wasn't at the Royal Collection Trust display earlier on today. We're not quite sure why, but of course she is now at the state banquet alongside Sir Tim Lawrence, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. Notably, though, Sir Keir Starmer not in that procession lineup, but his wife is. So Lady Starmer is within that royal procession. Sir Keir Starmer already in the room. Now, we did ask why. From my understanding, it's because there were far too many, well, not far too many, but there were quite a lot of men in President Trump's contingent. So they had to balance out the numbers with a number of women, because it has to be equal in the royal procession, because that is tradition coming in for a state banquet. So that is why Sir Keir Starmer was taken off the list, and Lady Starmer got to stay on it. It's not the first time it's happened. Rishi Sunak was also relegated to just being in the St George's Hall or Buckingham Palace's ballroom, I think it was at the time, ahead of a state banquet. So I wouldn't read too much into that, to be perfectly honest, but it is slightly ironic, isn't it, considering he's had a pretty tough 2 weeks, the Prime Minister, Alex.
Indeed, indeed. We can see there the procession leading around the hall there. We've also happy to be joined now by Grant Harold, former royal butler. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Exceptional scenes here tonight. Beautiful dress. What sort of things go into this kind of occasion, particularly from an administrative perspective?
There's a lot of planning. I mean, for several months before. In fact, as soon as obviously it's announced, the planning has already begun. And even getting that room ready for this occasion, I think the palace actually issued some guidance and said it takes about 10 days. You know, and there's several people involved in the actual laying up of the table. And it is quite an operation, because I'm sure you're aware that the king actually inspects the table once it's complete, like his mother used to ensure that it's ready for the evening.
Indeed. Just listen. We can listen in there for just a moment, if we can hear any of the music playing as the guests take their seats, it seems. Of course, there we can see Prince William, the Prince of Wales, and Melania Trump, the First Lady. She takes the seats. Donald Trump there, sitting next to the Princess of Wales. Of course, Cameron, the seating is exceptionally important at these events, is it not? Oh, Grant, I beg your pardon. We've just got you for the time being. Grant, how do we decide where people are sat, and how does that change the service of this event?
Yeah, the seating is quite important, actually. The King is quite strict about this one, as his mother was. So you'll notice that with President Trump on his right, that's who he will speak to certainly for the starter and the main course. And then the gentleman on his left is who he'll speak to during the pudding course and possibly dessert on to the coffee. That's a tradition that goes way back, and it means it causes a chain reaction around the table, so that everybody has got somebody, because you can't really talk across that table. It's impossible. In fact, if you look at the arrangements of the flowers and everything, it's not possible. So the idea is that somebody has got somebody to talk to during the meal. That's the reason it's done. And the King was always quite strict about that little rule. It's one of those very old-fashioned etiquette rules around the royal family.
Yes, and the etiquette, of course, of such an event. Are the guests prepared for such an event? Because, of course, when you look at the way that the royals have a protocol of the way they eat, is this important? Are guests briefed on this?
I think guests are given, I mean, when you're invited, they kind of cover certain things, like obviously dietary requirements, dress codes. I should quickly mention the King's actually wearing the Windsor uniform, which is interesting because obviously it's black tie white tie for the King of the Gentlemen. But at Windsor, they have what's called the Windsor uniform, which was first introduced by George III in 1777. So it's quite nice to see that they still keep that tradition as well.
Indeed. Let's listen in now as it looks like King Charles is making a statement.
That my wife and I welcome you to Windsor Castle on this, your second state visit to the United Kingdom. This unique and important occasion reflects the enduring bond between our two great nations, anchored by the deep friendship between our people. This relationship, which, with good reason, we and our predecessors have long called special, has made us safer and stronger through the generations. Our people have fought and died together for the values we hold dear. We have innovated, traded, and created together, fueling our economies and cultures through myriad forms of exchange. We have celebrated together, mourned together, and stood together in the best and worst of times. Mr. President, as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence next year, it is remarkable to think just how far we have come. I cannot help but wonder what our forebears from 1776 would make of this friendship today. The rebel commander and pioneering First President George Washington famously vowed never to set foot on British soil. And my 5 times great-grandfather, King George III, for his part, did not spare his words when he spoke of the revolutionary leaders. Today, however, we celebrate a relationship between our two countries that surely neither Washington nor King George III could possibly have imagined. The ocean may still divide us, but in so many other ways, we are now the closest of kin. Mr. President, you have spoken of your pride in your British roots. In fact, not only have you set foot on British soil twice in the last 2 months alone, but I understand that British soil makes for rather splendid golf courses. Now, for my part, I have always admired the ingenuity of the American people and the principles of freedom which your great democracy has represented since its inception. Throughout my life, from the very first visit to the United States in 1970, and over 20 visits since that time, I have cherished the close ties between the British and American peoples. In fact, had the media succeeded in the 1970s in their own attempt at deepening the special relationship, I myself might have been married off within the Nixon family. Mr. President, from York to New York, from Birmingham, England to Birmingham, Alabama, we are united by a common language and shared heritage. The many thousands of people from each of our countries who have made the other their home have enriched our societies immeasurably, a fact that gives me the greatest pride. Our cultural connections too continue to flourish, with our actors, musicians, writers and television presenters prospering in the hearts of transatlantic audiences. Today, our alliance spans every field of endeavour and shows vast potential for growth. The United Kingdom was your partner in the first trade deal of your administration, Mr. President, bringing jobs and growth to both our countries. And no doubt we can go even further as we build this new era of our partnership. Our two nations have an exceptional legacy of shared discovery. Together we laid the foundations of nuclear science, mapped the human genome, and built the internet, upon which all contemporary commerce, communication and defence is based. Together, our scientists and engineers are shaping the world of tomorrow, not least with new partnership agreements on technology and the prosperity that stands to bring. Our countries have the closest defence, security and intelligence relationship ever known. In 2 world wars, we fought together to defeat the forces of tyranny. Today, as tyranny once again threatens Europe, we and our allies stand together in support of Ukraine to deter aggression and secure peace. And our AUKUS submarine partnership with Australia sets the benchmark for innovative and vital collaboration. The successes of the British Redcoats and of George Washington's Continental Army today stand shoulder to shoulder, brothers and sisters in arms, protecting the freedoms we both cherish. Our countries are working together in support of crucial diplomatic efforts, not least of which, Mr. President, is your own personal commitment to finding solutions to some of the world's most intractable conflicts in order to secure peace. In striving for a better world, we also have a precious opportunity to safeguard and to restore the wonders and beauty of nature for the generations who follow us. We share the ambition and determination to preserve our majestic lands and waters, above all, to ensure that we have clean water, clean air, and clean food. Our legacy for the next 250 years and beyond is to ensure that our children, grandchildren, and those who come after them can experience the awe and magnificence of the natural treasures found in the countryside, on the coasts, in the seas, and in the national parks established by your predecessors and mine. Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, the bond between our two nations is indeed a remarkable one. Forged in the fire of conflict, it has been fortified through our shared endeavours and burnished by the deep affection between our people. Tested time and again, it has borne the weight of our common purpose and raised our ambition for a better world. So, in renewing our bond tonight, we do so with unshakable trust in our friendship and in our shared commitment to independence and liberty. Therefore, as we celebrate this unparalleled partnership, allow me to propose a toast to President Trump and the First Lady, and to the health, prosperity, and happiness of the people of the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. And if you think about it, it's a lot of presidents, and this was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually. But this is truly one of the highest honors of my life. Such respect for you and such respect for your country. For many decades, His Majesty the King has epitomized the fortitude, nobility, and the spirit of the British monarchy and the British people. He's dedicated himself to preserving the glory and unique character of this kingdom, restoring life to the rivers and streams, supporting the works of its artists and composers, planting trees and gardens in its countryside. And I just visited one of the most beautiful I've ever seen that you just completed, and protecting the architectural integrity of cities, villages, and towns. He has uplifted the poor, cared for rural farmers, and tended to wounded veterans like nobody else. I'll tell you that I just stood in line and shook about 150 hands, and the King knew every single person and every single company, and some of them had bad names like XYZ-Q3, and he knew every one of them, or at least I think he did, because nobody was complaining. I was very impressed with that. But I just want to say that His Majesty has also raised a remarkable son in His Royal Highness Prince of Wales. Really amazing. We've gotten to know you, and I think you're going to have an unbelievable success in the future. Melania and I are delighted to visit again with Prince William and to see Her Royal Highness, Princess Catherine, so radiant and so healthy, so beautiful. It's really a great honor. Thank you. Many years ago, His Majesty opened his archives to a biographer. Among the documents was a letter from 1993 in which he described the patriotism and guided his many projects. He wrote that he was, quote, entirely motivated by a desperate desire to put the great back into Great Britain. In the finest tradition of British sovereigns, he has given his whole heart, everything he's got, to those parts of Britain that are beyond the realm of mere legislation. It's not easy, but which define its essence and its virtue, its harmony and its soul. It's an amazing calling, and there's nobody that's answered that calling like you have. A fifth of all of humanity speaks, writes, thinks, and prays in the language born on these isles and perfected in the pages of Shakespeare and Dickens and Tolkien, and Lewis, Orwell, and Kipling. Incredible people, unbelievable people like we have rarely seen before, probably won't see again. The lion-hearted people of this kingdom defeated Napoleon, unleashed the Industrial Revolution, destroyed slavery, and defended civilization in the darkest days of fascism and communism. The British gave the world the Magna Carta, the modern parliament, and Francis Bacon's scientific method. They gave us the works of Locke, and Hobbes, Smith, and Burke, Newton, and Blackstone. The legal, intellectual, cultural, and political traditions of this kingdom have been among the highest achievements of mankind. There's really never been anything like it. The British Empire laid the foundations of law, liberty, free speech, and individual rights virtually everywhere the Union Jack has ever flown, including a place called America. You know that place very well, don't you? His Majesty spoke eloquently about the bond which inspired Sir Winston Churchill, and the bust is in the Oval Office right now, the beautiful bust of Winston Churchill, to coin the phrase special relationship. But seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language, and by transcendent ties of culture, tradition, ancestry, and destiny. We're like two notes in one chord, or two verses of the same poem, each beautiful on its own, but really meant to be played together. The bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It's irreplaceable and unbreakable, and we are, as a country, as you know, doing unbelievably well. We had a very sick country 1 year ago, and today, I believe we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. In fact, nobody's even questioning it, but we owe so much of that to you and the footing that you gave us when we started. Together, we've done more good for humanity than any two countries in all of history. Together, we must defend the exceptional heritage that makes us who we are, and we must continue to stand for the values and the people of the English-speaking world, and we do indeed stand for that. On behalf of all Americans, I offer a toast to one of the great friendships, to two great countries, and to His Majesty, King Charles III, a very, very special man, and also a very, very special queen. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
So there you have it. Brilliant speeches there by His Majesty King Charles, followed by United States President Donald Trump. What a difference in speeches there. Well, I'm going to bring in Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent, now to give us a wrap of that. Cameron, what did you make of it all?
Well, yeah, very different speeches, Alex, but of course I think both were incredibly diplomatic, and as expected it was basically about the ties, historic ties between our two nations. His Majesty the King saying the special relationship between Britain and the United States has made us safer and stronger through the generations. He also had a nod to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which is of course being marked next year, and how remarkably far we've come in our relationship, because of course let's say Britain and the United States were not the best of friends during that confederation 250 years ago. He also made a bit of a joke, the King, saying that if the media had succeeded in the 1970s in deepening the special relationship, I may have been married to the Nixon family, and he was referring there to a time where he went to the United States aged 21 and was pictured a lot with President Nixon's daughter at the time. So there was a lot of media speculation about whether or not he would marry an American, and of course it was his son who's actually married an American, Meghan Markle, instead. He also, as expected, talks about the cultural connections, actors, musicians, TV presenters, the vast potential Great Britain has for growth. I suspect the government may have had a hand in that line, because of course the whole point of a state visit is King Charles wielding that soft power. So when it comes to tomorrow's state checkers meetings, it's going to be those tough political negotiations between Starmer and President Trump. But also, interestingly, King Charles urged President Trump to protect nature. Clean air, clean water, clean food is what he said, and I suspect perhaps President Trump will not do too much to help that particular cause of King Charles, but who knows, watch this space. But also he did talk about our shared defence and the tyranny in Europe, particularly around Ukraine, and the aggression, King Charles called it, in Ukraine, and our shared defence ties between the US and the United States. And President Trump thanks the hospitality of the King and Queen, and as well as the Prince and Princess of Wales, and said that you have raised, King Charles, a wonderful son, the Prince of Wales, and also did not, of course, mention the other son, who was in California living with Meghan Markle. He also mentioned the Princess of Wales and said she was radiant tonight, she looked healthy, she looks beautiful. Of course, the Princess of Wales is now in remission from cancer, but I think that just shows the deep respect President Trump has for those senior members of the royal family, the King, the Queen, and the Prince and Princess of Wales. And he says he wants to help put the great back in Great Britain. And if that isn't a message we should take away from tonight, then I don't know what is.
Oh, well, that's a fantastic wrap there of those speeches. Thank you so much, Cameron Walker there, our royal correspondent, live in Windsor. Couldn't quite get in there. Maybe next time, Cameron, will get you inside that banquet. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic event. Well, let's get the thoughts of my panel joining me tonight. Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, political commentator Russell Quirk, and journalist and broadcaster Nina Miskov. Nina, I'll start with you. Very different speeches. Very different speeches here. Just to give you some... What I've taken away from this is Charles's speech, the King's speech, seemed very focused on lots of words I picked out here. Trade, exchange, innovate, close ties. Lots of words revolving around the exchanging of things, which is, of course, what the government really want to get out of this entire visit, is that we get a form of a trade deal, or at least a better one than the last one we got. What do you think? What do you think of that?
I think this is absolutely what the King should be saying. I was fascinated by the fact that he mentioned, you know, the climate change type subject, because obviously Trump doesn't care anything for that. But this is one of Charles's hobby horses and has been all his life. So he will have got that in there, knowing that this is not something that will appeal to Trump. So I'm good on him for that. But it was very much, as you say, about the trade. I thought Trump's speech was a kind of summing up of history, if you like. You know, mentioning all the sort of creative side of things, but also it seemed very grateful and, not quite humble, because Trump is never humble, but in a way about as close to humble as Trump could get.
Indeed, I took that away as well. I did think it was a very reserved speech from Trump. It's nothing like we normally see, Russell, from Donald Trump, where he's sort of...
Well, yeah, I caught your eye just now, didn't I, when he started to go off script.
Yes.
And you and I both looked at each other with a mischievous smile as if to say, let's hope he does this. Right? Let's hope he goes off script.
I did see the Queen, of course, look up at a moment when he was talking to go, oh, what's he going to say?
Yes.
As if she was hoping. Obviously,
and Melania too, actually. She had that little thing in her eye as if to say, please don't do what I think you're about to do. Look, what I took away, yes, apart from the differences really, was how much Donald Trump clearly loves Britain. Of course, he's connected by way of his mother, obviously being Scottish, being British. I think that was very, very genuine insofar as his fondness and respect for this country. And I would just say to all of those protesters that are lining the streets right now, protesting his visit, just think about what he's just said, because I think he was very, very humble and very, very respectful about this country.
Yeah, and Mark, Charles, again, going back to that close ties, the common language, shared heritage, shared discovery of the world. Charles really made a lot of our great accomplishments a joint accomplishment with the Americans. Again, it's that sort of softening, that sweetening up of them all. It wasn't just our accomplishments, guys, it was yours too.
No, that's exactly right. And you almost expected him to say, can we just sign here and get the trade deal done, right? We're natural partners. I mean, I suppose what the King said was entirely what I was expecting. I don't think he really dialed the climate change dial as much as Nina suggests. He sort of said clean air, clean water. He made sure he kept a bit closer to conservation rather than the controversies of climate change. That is probably the most on-script I've ever seen President Trump, would you not say? He only diverted from it once.
He's been managed well.
I don't think I've ever seen him hold a script and basically stick to 99% of it.
But don't you think that's a bit of a shame?
Well, yes, I agree.
But I think he's overawed, isn't he?
Well, the other thing is, it is worth us reflecting on that nobody in the world pulls things off like we can for this. It is absolutely fantastic. It's kind of nice to look at, but it is actually part of our soft power. And going to Nina's point, I don't think there's very much that can humble President Donald Trump. But if there is something that can humble him, it's throwing on a banquet like this. Yeah. So we might as well use it.
Americans can't. They can build many things. They can innovate, but they can't build old.
We can't build history.
Old has to be there, and you just can't fake it.
And I think that's kind of how I felt when I saw him and watching the ceremonies today, of course, as well. You see, even though it's very small scale compared to what he's used to in America with his massive F-2 bombers flying overhead and their big jets circling around him with baseball games, this is almost like stepping back in time. And I think what I take away, Nina, from Donald Trump, at least, is that he does have that love for Great Britain. Whether people like it or not, he clearly does love this country, perhaps because of his mother being Scottish. And again, it's very reflected in his speech. He was talking about things I'd never expect him to. How he defeated Napoleon. Yep. He even harked back to the British Empire and was very praising of the British Empire. Not something you'd ever possibly see from a Democrat president.
No, and the thing is, it's the history. It's the ancient part of it. He sort of feels almost like a lost son that's come home in a way. He's almost claiming our heritage for himself.
Yes. But America's heritage is us. They are a country that's only 250 years old, as was referred to at the beginning of the speech.
Quite a long time, actually.
But I think they understand that our history is also their shared history. I do think it was interesting, though, that King Charles had a couple of comedic little digs insofar as the War of Independence, 1776, and redcoats and so on.
He said something along the lines of, I wonder what our forebearers would have thought of this.
Of us sitting here now.
Yes.
Anyway, specific reference